Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily. And this is the LP News Network. We're here today with Mike Lamb, Vice President, Asset Protection at Kroger, Mark Stinde, MBA, LPC, Vice President, Asset Protection, 7-Eleven, and Kevin Colman, Group Vice President of Asset Protection at Macy's. With retail rolling out a multitude of technologies faster than ever before in history, from buy online and pick up at store to mobile pay to scan and go, cashierless stores and home delivery. The issues are now, how is all of this impacting and changing the core LP or AP executive in the store and at corporate? How involved are we in these rollouts on the front end? And on the back end, how does it change the essence of our investigative abilities, training and awareness side, and on the operational compliance side? Coupled with all of this, we have an e-commerce fraud growing and a number of LP and AP executives now managing those processes. And then we have this invisible slight merging of IT security and loss prevention that's being talked about and could end up evolving all the way in years to come. Now that's certainly open for debate, and that's why we brought this group together. So gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
You know, Mike, let's start with you. We're just at the beginning of this technological revolution, literally, from buy online, pick up at store, to scan and go, mobile pay. How fast is it developing? How long before it's everywhere? And how is it impacting the store level LP executive?
Well, first and foremost, Gus, I think it's moving at warp speed. If you think about at least the company that I support today and the one I more recently worked for, the advent of self-checkout and the revolution of change and the evolution of change on the front end is coming at us fast and furiously. And I think over time it dynamically changes the landscape for the LP executive and their teams. And for us at Kroger, we are focused on that. It's one of those things you always want to stay a step ahead of with regard to technology, people, engagement. There is a significant value proposition, I think, for retailers as you think about the transformation of our front ends in retailing. And therefore, businesses are going there, and they're going there quickly, and we better be going alongside them from an LP perspective.
Yeah. You know, Mark, you're seeing some of the same developments in your business. How is it impacting the multi-unit LP executive, and what do they need to do to stay highly effective and productive? I mean, you even have Amazon lockers at your stores. Okay, any risk factors there? I mean, how are you seeing it evolving for your folks?
Well, first of all, our company is committed to, and if you've seen any recent interviews with our CEO, this idea of a frictionless environment where the customer comes in and they're not slowed down as they try to come in and get what they need for the day. So whether it be, we've talked about self-checkout already, but really, almost a no checkout, and it's all through Apple Pay or some vehicle like that. And so we're working on that, and we've got a digital team that's committed to how do we engage with our customers digitally in any way we can, whether it be through social media or how we pay in the store, or how we engage with the customer on a day-to-day basis. So we've got to be upstream on that, and then we have to educate the field folks, because whatever we put in place then has to be executed by those folks. And so if you think about the pace of change that we're seeing, to Mike's earlier point, it's so fast compared to what it's been in the past. You think about when back in the early days when we were focused on internal theft, external theft, and paperwork errors. Yeah. Well, the world's changed, and there's a lot more for us to focus on. The Amazon locker, you mentioned that. That's a traffic driver for us. We're excited about it. Obviously, there's some high dollar items in those lockers at times, and so we work with Amazon in terms of partnering with them on what's going on in the stores. But we love, especially in an urban environment where we can get folks coming in to pick up their packages, and then they can transact with us with our goods as well.
Is the LP executives out there keeping pace? The field folks and some of the LP folks in the stores, are they really trying to keep pace? Are we building programs to help them stay up to pace from a standpoint of all this change with scan and go and so on? I mean, that's got to be kind of a tough requirement for all of you.
Yeah. That's the ambition, Gus. And I can tell you at Kroger, we have dedicated an additional resource more recently to focusing on just the rapid element of change on the front end and making sure that our LP folks have a seat at the table. when those discussions are taking place, whether it's the expansion of self-checkout and the intent to drive utilization there, or whether it's something like Scan, Bag, and Go, which I think, Mark, materially changes, and Kevin, materially changes the landscape of the traditional store detective or LP agent as you think about the 5 elements. If you got mobile pay, game changes. So it's inherent upon the LP industry, in my opinion, to immerse themselves, stay actively engaged with your front-end teams, your IT team, and the various groups that are driving all this change, because it's not one that you want to be trailing on from an LP perspective. You certainly want to be ahead of it.
Right. Kevin, these developments, like we've all said, they're happening so fast. How do the LP executives stay in front of this, and how much of a role should they be playing? And training becomes even more critical. And is this impacting the role of LP across the board?
It is, and I think Mike actually started touching on it, but the real key is to be involved in the planning process, not in a reactionary sense. So, we do have a group coming up that has grown up in this world and is used to mobile checkout and used to convenience shopping and friction fees. So it's actually a little harder for us to digest as leaders sometimes than it is your people in the field.
Good point.
But these teams, really need to be operations/asset protection, where they understand what the business model is, and they understand that they're not going to raise their hand and say, no, we can't do this because of the risk. That the object is to figure out how we do this and reduce the risk. So as long as we're involved in that planning process and we don't miss the train as it's leaving the station, and we raise our hand and we say, okay, well, how are we going to remove the sensors if we're going to do self-checkout? And we bring up all those other obstacles that we'll have to work our way around, then our teams will be engaged and we'll have the best end product.
Mike, Scan and Go in self-checkout and cashierless stores is coming full speed. There's a couple thousand stores in Asia, in China, already there. How does that impact LP's ability to monitor loss and theft? Just the basic core principle.
Well, I think it significantly challenges the traditional thinking around how you protect yourself on the front end, and as I mentioned earlier, just the mechanics and behaviors of shoplifting. When I have the ability to walk in a store with a mobile device and literally walk within the aisle, select an item, pay for it, and leave, imagine the amount of pressure that puts on an LP agent or a store detective to try to understand, is it live or is it Memorex? Did I pay for this thing or did I not? And I think one of the things that the ambition we have at Kroger is, how do we leverage really 2 things, Gus, and that's technology. How can we put technology out in front of this challenge in a more efficient and effective way? And then how do we engage people? And because I think it's going to take the combination of the 2. I don't think either one or the other outweighs the other one, meaning you got to really take advantage of any technology that may be out there that you could put or bring to bear against liabilities. And you have to have a very engaged and alert front-end team.
Almost real-time receipt.
Absolutely. And we've talked about it before, but close partnerships with these other key cross-functional stakeholders like your IT department, as you build these tripwires and you look at the things that you'll need to be mindful of, not for the 98% of our customers that are good and legitimate folks, but for the 2% that want to take advantage. And that is going to be the challenge. It is the challenge today, as a matter of fact.
Certainly. Mark, how does it change the profile of the LP executive you look for in the future? I mean, obviously Kevin had mentioned that some of the younger folks, the millennials, are already accustomed to a lot of this stuff. So maybe even as some leaders are behind the curve and they're ahead of it. But how does it change the profile and impact the profile of tomorrow's successful LP executive?
Well, I think, you've already alluded to it. The reality is that someone that works in our function today has got to truly have an operator focus, understand technology, have good ideas on how we might combat this, this change that might add, some loss to us or some shrink to our stores. So I think the change is in the profile of someone really is focused on that. You think about the old days. Again, you go back, guy could catch shoplifters and he was on your team, and the reality is that person's got to do more than that. They've got to have more functionality and utility than just catching the bad guy.
Right. That's almost a dying breed as it is.
Yeah.
You know, the talk is, and you know, whether people disagree with it or not, is IT security and LP are merging. There's an invisible merger going on. Real-time access, you know, predictability, you know, analytics. I mean, all of this. LP is moving more analytics now, and IT security is dealing with the number one threat to the business, and that is the hacker or whomever. You know, do you see that evolving? Do you see that eventually, maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, is it going to be one, or are we going to stay separate?
Yeah, I think, you know, what we've kind of touched on already is that we're getting away from, you know, that apprehension at the door type environment and going into a data-driven environment where our cases are much more sophisticated and take a long time to put together, and that same data that you're using to make those self-checkout cases or those RFID cases or those Amazon locker cases is the same data that your IT department is holding and housing in order to protect the transaction. So, you know, already we see with these buy online, pick up in store transactions that the communication is getting better, so we can intercept before the mules come in and take the merchandise out, and we can get our hands on some people. So that's where the intersection will be. We'll both be living off the same data set, we'll both identify the same suspects, but we'll still need people in the stores to eventuate the apprehensions of these people.
Mm-hmm. And you even have Macy's even has a position in the store for buy online, pick up at store.
That's correct, yes.
Has there been any, I shouldn't ask this, but has there been any discussion about making that an AP job, a loss prevention job? Or?
Well, you know, again, we're continuously looking to like merge responsibilities, and I think that those lines between all jobs, between operations, asset protection, between IT, I think they're all going to continually blur, and we're going to run with leaner teams with better technology. And again, we need like a more talented individual that can kind of assess a caseload and understand the sophistication of it today, as opposed to what it was maybe 20 years ago when I got into this industry.
Similar to you with your pick up at store.
You know, Gus, I think you pose a very interesting question between the world of data security, your IT team, and your LP or AP team. I think now more than ever, at least in the initial step of all this, each one of those groups have to be in lockstep. You know, we have a Kroger technology team, and we meet with them on a regular and routine basis. Data security, all the things that are important in that realm that connect and tie to asset protection. So I don't know that you would ever, at least maybe not in my career, what's left of it, see that the three would merge into one. But I think you're going to increasingly see the absolute need to have those three entities integrated every step of the way as you think about strategy, you think about deployment of programs, you think about direction the business is headed. I think now more than ever, certainly more so than in my career.
I actually think you need to insert yourself into that IT security function, and because there are true silos that exist, and you know, quite honestly, it's complex. So sometimes folks stay away from it because they don't understand it. And so I would urge our industry, whether we become responsible for it, to educate yourselves on what the key components of that side of the business are, and get involved. We have a role in that, and making sure that we are connected to what our function should be supporting, but also understanding at a macro level how they support the organization.
Actually, being a journalist or a newspaper guy, I report on a lot out of the CSO world and LP meets IT column. And I've seen a lot written about the IT security folks are feeling cut off. They don't feel part of the IT team because the IT team has so many priorities on their desk that the IT security group feels a little siloed. And they're having some issues or questioning who they report to. Should we report to IT or should we report separately? So that industry is kind of going through some of the similar identity things that I think some of us in LP have gone through over the decades. So because of that splinter, and I think that it might evolve that way because they just feel separate from the IT group. they're really not part of the IT process, even though they're called that, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about this. At any rate, so.
Yeah, I think that may just come off of, where you are in your digital evolution.
Right.
So if you have a team and you have to get your omni-channel selling going, like really that's all the focus. But if you're up there and some of the bigger companies more established online, I think you see them integrate into the teams and feel a part of a team. So that's probably a very company specific statement.
A generic question: how many LP folks, in your opinion, in your knowledge, now run e-commerce fraud? If you were to take a guess at the industry, just 20%, 10%, 30%. I mean, you interact with your colleagues, all the time. What are you hearing?
I'd say 20-25%.
Yeah, I would say it's very low because that's not the field that you get into. You come out as a programmer, and that's usually the people that end up running your systems. So that's a little bit tougher of a transition to go from a fraud analyst per se to your internet security. Not so much the other way, but I do see those teams coming together, and I would say that there's probably a good 20 to 30% of companies where the key player, the number two, at least the person in the meeting, is from the AP world.
Mike?
For me, I think e-commerce is exploding. Look at the Fortune 5 organizations out there and all the ambition to invest, acquire, put an enormous emphasis on this whole thing of digital and physical and how the two come together, because that's how the American consumer and the worldwide consumer is shopping. I think we're behind the eight ball as an LP industry in aligning ourselves in a way that will allow us to stay as much in front of that as we need to. I can tell you it's not my expertise, but it's an area of the business that I think as AP leaders we all need to focus on, because much like we're seeing the transformation of our front ends and the utilization of self-checkout increase and scan bag and go, the e-commerce world is exploding. And there are probably, in my estimation, just my humble opinion, Gus, far too many experts in our industry relative to e-commerce and how we intersect with the data security groups and the infrastructure in companies that set up this e-commerce channel. And it too, and again, there may be companies that are absolutely best in class, and I'm not suggesting that they don't exist. But for me personally, I think it's an area that perhaps we're a little bit behind on.
So, gentlemen, last question. What does 2018 hold in store for us from a retail industry perspective? Not just LP. We've been through one heck of a year in 2017. Okay, it's transformation. We've heard apocalypse. We've heard all kinds of things. I think the apocalypse is for the folks that are now maybe gone out of retail. But what do we see in 2018? Just your thoughts, Mike.
If I'm going to use one word, I'd say change. And we've talked a lot about it throughout our discussion today. Whether it's changing the way the consumer shops on the front end, or on the floor of the store, or the expansion of the e-commerce space and digital and physical. To me, 2018 for retailing is going to be about change, and quite frankly, it's survival of the fittest. It is a competitive world out there, and those companies that are innovative in their thinking, and I think I work for one that is, and are foot forward in thinking about not just how the customer shops today or tomorrow, but how they shop the day after tomorrow and beyond, I think are going to be the leaders in retail as we move forward.
I think we're going to continue to see consolidation. We've seen Amazon go into brick and mortar, and I think that's probably not the end of that. So, and that could impact any of us. When you're looking at the footprint that some of us have out there, I think the one thing, as I've talked to folks that have been displaced recently, look, it's a more competitive world as it relates directly to loss prevention in our specialized function. You got fewer storefronts, and you've got a lot of competition out there. And so I think, to Mike's point, I think we need to buckle up. It's going to be a year of change.
Kevin?
I'm actually very optimistic. So I think we've gone through a long period now of right-sizing in a down economy. And I think that a lot of places have been right-sized. I think the economy, I mean, there's some talk about 4% growth next year, which is potential. You know, the tax law that goes into effect for retailers, for cash flow positive businesses, that's a great boon. Not so much for those ones that weren't making money, but for the ones that were, it is. So I think when you get comp store growth, when we go back to comp store growth in the stores, you know, that's everything else kind of stems off that, and you probably see some expansions going on out there. You know, in addition, if Amazon's pressured with some taxes, what we're calling an internet tax, which is not really what it is, but you know, some of the taxes on their online purchases, again, that levels the playing field even further. So I think brick and mortar's in a good place. I think they're positioned for growth the next couple of years, and it's probably a good place to be.
There you go. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to thank you for watching. And until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.